Hi guys, my name's Jason, and I know most people in the room here. I'm a local sailmaker here, and I'm a member of the club. Do a lot of sponsorship with VRC and also for Southern Straits at West Van. And Rory asked me to put a little presentation together last week for Straits, a little tech talk. So I sat down and jotted down quite a few notes and just putting together ideas and thoughts that I have that I've learned from sailing with people in this room and sailing on different boats in Vancouver and just things I see in sails in the loft. So I have a small presentation together here. It's broken into kind of 5 different areas. First one's sail prep. We'll go a little bit over sail inspection, what sails to bring along that lines, so before you leave the dock. And then boat prep, more just to do with SailTrim really, just knowing settings on the boat, everything you get off market properly. And next one's crew prep, a few ideas for the crew, how you can show up ready for a distance race. And trimming, a few points on each sail on the boat. And changing gears, which is a big thing for me in distance racing. It's all about keeping the boat moving and changing gears all the time, staying with the wind. So I'll give a few points on that also. So I'll jump right into it. Sail prep. Inventory, how many sails do we want to bring on this race? Most people bring every sail they have for the most part, but we're pretty lucky that a lot of people just day race or we usually do much shorter races. 30 miles would be a long race, whereas most people are going to be out there for 100 miles to 150. And you're going to need, the way I see it, in 24 hours, most of the Straits that I've done, I think I've only been lucky enough to do medium course once. I've always been a long course. But in 24 hours of sailing, you're going to see everything. Even if it's calling for a windy forecast, it's going to be light. In 24 hours, you're going to get a bit of everything, including nothing and loads. And you could have the slowest race ever, and then you come back and you get the outflow and off of Passage Island, and all of a sudden you're at 25 knots at 5 a.m. So you're gonna see everything. So you have to decide what sails to bring. But you do want to have your heavier sails that you normally don't take. And you do want to throw in that 1.5 ounce kite and things like that. So that's just through experience and asking other people in the docks. It's definitely good to go through every sail. One of the safety requirements is having a small either storm jib or even a small number 4, which normally you wouldn't always have in your boat. And you also have a secondary attachment point. So I've had a few people in the loft. A lot of times we would just do grommets up the loft of your smallest jib, and usually that jib would probably be short on the hoist, maybe 80% or less. But for a lot of people, we used to do just the grommets and have a rope that you would kind of lash in case your foil did break. You could lash it through the grommet around. The soft loops are getting really popular, and we're using those a lot more. So even just having those grommets and then having 10 soft loops, having one for each one would be an easy setup also. So that's something to think about it, to make sure you're at the proper sails for safety requirements. Jumping into sail inspection. For a lot of people, they may not have used their boat all winter. Maybe you're doing polar bear, but you still have a few sails that you probably haven't used during polar bear. So generally on most boats, we usually throw sails on the dock and at least open them up, take a look. And basically just looking for repairs. Mylar sails can be fairly easy to try and find some insignia or stickers to fix up. Biggest one would be the Genoa luff tapes from hoisting off the foil. We quite often see sails with numerous repairs needed there, an old one that maybe needs to be fixed. But there's nothing worse to be out there and the wind increases to the next set, to your heavy 1 or 2, and you try and hoist the sail. We use a number 2 maybe 3 times a year sometimes. And you try and hoist it, and it only gets halfway, you can't get in the groove. And what do? Take it down and go back to the sail you had and just keep sailing overpowered. But definitely check the Genoa luff tapes. Telltales and ticklers be the biggest thing for this race also, because it's night racing. Half the race is going to be in the dark. So you really want to have your telltales and ticklers. Once it gets dark, you don't have nearly as many senses working for you. And on some boats, we always make lube them before we hoist. And during the race, if you have to, with lots of ticklers on the Genoa, and so that you're ready for nighttime. Tack shackles on the sails too, they seize up. Everything to do with metal and salt, and then left for the winter. A lot of times you go to try and get your tack shackle on, you either can't open it or close it for that matter. So you want to make sure all your shackles on your sails and tack or on the boat itself are working well. Spreader patches on the mainsail. A lot of people, once you ease your main out far enough, it's going to hit that spreader. and a lot of people won't even have patches there. But the classic thing after Swiftsure, after you've gone downwind, the sail plastered against the spreader all night, is you see in the morning, you see the spreader just poking through. It's not quite as bad as a leech poke on a Genoa, but yeah, you want to make sure that you have a proper little cover for spreader patch, and also for the reef also, because if you throw a reef in, your sail might still be hitting spreader. So sometimes you need two of them. Rings in the corners for Mylar laminates, carbon salt water, like to react together, and so the external ring shackles on sails can break down, and I've seen a few clues blast away that way, and you can usually tell this if you're starting to see corrosion, it's probably an issue. It's probably going to be an issue, but you always want to look for that at the beginning of the season. Sailbags. It's always fun during a race when someone says to go get a sail and go down. There's like 6 gray bags and it's dark and they all look the same. So you want your sailbags well labeled for sure, and the sails labeled. Most people go pretty crazy with Sharpies on the sails themselves, mark the corners. It doesn't really make any sense during the day when you can see it all, but at night it sure helps. And making sure that they're packed properly in the sailbags. So your sails, say the blade that has battens in it, it might just be flaked to the leech and stored down below, but if you want it ready to hoist during the race, you might want to reflake that to the luff. If you're on bow, you want to know each sail, each Genoa, each jib is ready to make it hoist and make it easy for the bowman. Kites have to be, if you're heavier kites, you might want to have the tack and head banded, and just make sure we're following the new eco rules. Sail numbers on your sails, it doesn't matter as much in day racing around here, but definitely for straights you're going to have the proper sail numbers on each sail. And the boat numbers is a new rule. I think they just came in last year before for straights also, so you have to have that on the stanchions also. Division flags, and I think course flags are going to be covered by West Van this year. They're going to have some neat ones this year, but make sure to find out if you need to have a division flag up either, and have those organized, because your division for this race might be different than what you do for Wednesday night racing and that. Batten pockets would be another good one too for the mainsail. If you're not already in the habit of checking that, especially the top batten, either the tension might have loosened up over time, but checking the batten pockets and making sure none of them are going to fly out. So that's sustained sailing all day, all night, and if you're losing the top batten, it could really hurt your race. The other ones wouldn't be quite as strong, but any full batten is going to really affect sail shape. And on a race like straights, you might want to have a spare batten ready for something like that. And like I already mentioned, labeling sails and sailbags is definitely a good idea. I know one skipper he has 3 or 4 spinnakers and they're all different colors, so he just has to, all he has to say is go get blue, and he knows the blue sail's going to come up. So that's what I had written down for sail inspection. I guess the only thing I might add to that too was for sail inspection is a sail repair kit. It's good to have. You might want to go through your kit that you usually keep on the boat, or maybe bring one for this race. With Mylar sails, they repair pretty easily as long as the tear isn't too big. So a lot of times I keep round 24-inch round circles of insignia for people to slam on really quickly. You want to have you definitely want to have some spinnaker repair tape. I don't think I've ever done that race where you don't see a spinnaker drying out in the sun on the deck and trying to get it dry enough to throw down some nylon. Because I mean, small repairs can be fixed up pretty easily, pretty quickly when you need to. And some people even bring a blow dryer if they're keen, things like that, so they can repair them down below. But you definitely would, the sticker, if you have some older materials, you might want to double check that they still work, because they definitely, being left down a wet boat, the stick only lasts a couple of years, and some of that might have to be recycled. Rolling into boat prep. A few things that just thinking of this race that we use a lot. I made a few notes here. Target boat speeds. That should be, whether it's this race, it should always be on your boat, but especially for this race, and I think especially for sailing at night, you really want to be able to, it gives the crew something to work at. You're always trying to make sure boat speed is the only thing that's going to win these races. And of course tactician too, but you really need boat speed all the time, keeping the boat moving, and you can really just get caught not realizing that you're driving below your target. Someone has to always be looking at that. And ideally they should be laminated and right in the cabin. or right in the cockpit where they're visible and people are talking about them. Both for upwind and downwind, just as important downwind too. Lube locks, tracks, and shackles. Same thing as that I mentioned before with the sails too. So if it's early in the season, you haven't done that, you definitely want to make sure all the blocks are moving well. It can be really hard in the gear and the blocks if they're not moving. And I've seen some boats damaged for no reason, just because a block was seized and the load was dispersed in another spot. What else we got here? Lights. Again, sailing at night, so I think lights is critical, and both the skipper and usually there's a couple keen people on each boat who really go crazy on lights, and you have to. At a minimum for this race, you want to have your own headlamp, just so you're independent when you need to be. And you should always have the red hue of for it. For some reason, if anyone's down below and that light shines on inside the cabin, it really blinds everyone up top. When you're on deck and if you shine the light straight up, drivers don't usually get nearly as upset. It's that light just on the horizon, right where they're looking, that hurts them the worst. But the boat itself, you want to make sure if it has a masthead light. You usually wouldn't want to leave that one on the whole race, but it's nice if it works well. Some guys will put in a red one or something so they can use it all night. Some boats do race with their mast light on. That is the one like 2/3 up on. And the top one, also that one that can really, for some boats you can see the masthead indicator really well. That's an easy one to use also. Works really well. But overall, you really want a couple of really good strong flashlights that you can boom, get your telltales on the main, ticklers on the Genoa. Without that, you're gonna have a hard time trimming at night. So everyone should try and bring their own flashlight also. In-haulers and out-haulers, or whatever you want to call them, for the Genoa. They're as soon as you get into distance racing, when we're sailing in the bay, we're just we have one gear, we set it in one gear, we jump on the rail, and you just go for 20 minutes. You know, you're not spending a lot of time trimming the Genoas, but in a race like this, you're going to be playing with that Genoa a lot. There's always going to be a person down. It's going to be a lot of white sail reaching. Tends to be in this race, not as much. I mean, there is spinnaker work, but if there's ever a race with lots of white sail reaching, I'd say it's this one. And so you want to be able, depending on you should really know your boat and have a plan to out-haul the Genoa. So whether you're lucky enough to have a track all the way along your gunnels that you can attach to it any place, or whether you're more limited, but you should have a shackle ready to go to connect with the block and be able to transfer, be able to out-haul the Genoa lead. As soon as the wind falls back a little bit and you're still white sailing, you're going to want to move it forward and also outboard to increase that slot. If the main's dropping down, the slot's going to get too small. You're going to want to open that up a little and get some twist in the Genoa. And try and fly it the best you can. The Genoa is meant to go upwind. It's what it's designed to do. It's not meant to go at any angle less than that. So you just have to be creative with what you have. Basically, it's not going to look perfect. But having a person forward with a flashlight, trimming at night, I usually rely on, because you can't see anything hardly during the day when the main's sitting there, when you're at the back, let alone at night. But I usually have someone up front trying to watch the top ticklers and trying to fly the ticklers at the top is quite often. Works on the Genoa when you're white sail reaching. Covered everything there. In-hauling on some boats. In-hauling on the Genoa will work also on non-overlapping jibs. In-hauling is pretty straightforward. Most boats are set up for it. And on Genoas, I've raced on a few boats where we in-haul only when you're beating mostly, but bringing the clew in another foot sometimes can create a bit more twist in the Genoa and angle of attack also. So it's just something to play with. Watch your boat speed, and it can give you. It can make another little half a knot. It depends on the boat. It can be as simple as on some boats we'll have just either with a bowline or you have a shackle onto the clew. So you have a 10-foot line, and that's the one you draw to different places to a block, grind on a winch. So when you go to tack, you just let it go, and that line just tacks with the clew, and it's on the other side. Always just tack the boat first. Use your usual leads in that, and then start to switch to either in-hauling or out-hauling in that. But I guess for the in-hauler, you would use that when you're tacking, whereas the out-hauler, you're not going to be tacking if you're white sail reaching. So I have it right in front of me here. Marking halyards and marking your halyard settings is pretty critical. It helps. You might already have them marked for buoy racing. It really helps in buoy racing. It really helps at night. It's fine when you can see all the sails. But it's a good thing to do even during the day with Straits. A lot of times people break out the Sharpie and start marking things and getting ready for night. You'll see that a lot, or if you're doing a practice sail. Ideally, you'll have your standard setting for that sail, or in a breezy condition, and then at night you can judge by the wind. Oh, I know this is we're in the middle. It's a little bit heavier than what, or just above the average wind speed for this sail. So you know you can always put on a couple more inches in the dark, and the trimmers can look at it and ease it off. It's always easier to have a couple more inches of halyard on when you first hoist it, and it's pretty easy to ease. Different ways of doing that, I guess, with Sharpie, or I've seen people with colored thread in there. And Genoa cars also. As soon as you change sails, unless everyone knows your boat, you want to have all your leads marked, both for day or night. But as soon as you change the sail, it's sure handy to know your standard setting. With Genoas, we usually have stickers for each sail on each side where they're equal, and just keep up with that as you're tacking, and communicate with your trimmer on the other side that if you've moved the lead and now you're tacking, let the guys on the other side know. Prep. Crew prep. A few things I had put down for things to bring. Flashlight for trimming, discussed that. The other thing too, if you have, once you all have flashlights, it's helping the other trimmers. Everyone takes turn on this race, so quite often, you know, if you have at least 5 or 6 people usually on the boat, and distance sailing with a couple people down below taking breaks, everyone's going to get a little chance at trimming, I would think, all the sails over the course of this race. So, and you want to help each other. So not only flying a flashlight, you have your own flashlight, but if someone else is flying the kite, you know, usually a couple guys in the bow will take turns holding a flashlight onto the spinnaker, or just checking the tipplers to the person trimming also on the Genoa. So you can really keep busy even as a crew. If you're not trimming, you can keep yourself busy. Most boats that I've raced on, we do a practice sail for this race. It's so early in the year, everyone's just trying to, and there's so much gear involved, safety gear involved. A lot of people do the practice sail, and normally the focus of that practice sail is just flat out safety, to get to know all the safety gear on board, application of practicing men overboard, at least talking it through. But if you are doing one of those on your boat, it's a good opportunity for the rest of the crew to, while you're out there that same day, is to get to know the inventory, make sure that everyone on board who's trimming and that understands the inventory, and the settings, start to mark your settings on the sails, and know where your spare sheets are, things like that, all the things that you're going to need. So it doesn't come in the middle of the night and you're looking for an out hauler and you can't find it, right? You should know where everything is. The crew should have, even before the race, you should be able to talk. A lot of times you'll see sail changes coming, but you should be prepared for sail changes. Generally for head sail changes, it's going to either be a tacking change, which is ideal, where you'll be on one tack, hoist one sail inside of it, tack, and then drop the sail that used to be up on the inside. It makes it easy on the crew. But on Straits, you're more likely, if you're white sail reaching and going one direction, you're going to have to hoist one and drop the other underneath it. Just having a plan amongst the crew, who's going to get the sail, who's going to be on bow, who's going to help fold it. The biggest thing is about doing the sail change and then getting rid of the sail on deck is almost the biggest challenge. And also getting that sail into a sail bag so that it'll actually be hoisted and ready to go up again. I've been on a few Straits on boats where we were just learning and they just get stuffed down below, and trying to fold a sail down below is even more harder in the wind up top. It doesn't work either, and you might have a heater down there. There's a lot of other stuff that can go wrong other than a big wet sail taking up the whole cabin. Yeah, you should definitely have a plan to talk through that to make your sail changes go smoothly, and everything about them. You have to do them, because if the wind's sustained and you're out of the range, the sail that you have up there, it's hard on the sails, it's hard on the boat, and it's really slow. So you have to do sail changes. Some little things for the crew to bring: multi-tools, so you're ready for whatever shackle or anything you need to use in the middle of the night. Gloves for dexterity. Everyone wants to wear really warm things, but you still have to be able to pull the sheets and that. Electrical tape's really handy to have for a number of things. on the boat. Warm seat. This is a really cold race. I guess it must be our coldest race of the year. I used to always bring a old life jacket, foam life jacket, because I find this race, it really doesn't matter what you wear, because at 3 a.m. you're the same temperature as the boat. It doesn't matter how much you put on. And but yeah, sitting on a life jacket makes a huge difference on the deck for me. And then if you want to snooze, you just lay it out a little bit, and if it's your turn to catch a little, close your eyes quickly. But and whatever tricks you have, I've seen people stuff foam down their pants. There's a lot of things you can do, but you really want to stay active, keep yourself awake, go down for small breaks, and just either, if you need a snooze, take one and then come back with more energy. Gravel, it's not really a big lumpy race. Straits isn't really known for that, but it can be, and there can be waves out there for sure. But generally, I would usually take one at 7 a.m. I'll take one in the morning, maybe at noon, and then just see how the day goes. Because I'll forget about it if I don't need it. But if the wind comes up and depending if you don't have it in your system, it can be too late. And I've never seen lumpy seas. I've never been on a boat that didn't lose a crew or two. And these are all good sailors, but it's almost just Russian roulette, I think. But it's something to think about to have that ready to go. The biggest way to fight fatigue and or getting sick on a boat too is just I'd say 50% of the problems people have is just they haven't drank enough or ate properly. As soon as we hit the water, we lose our appetite quite often. So we definitely don't drink enough. Eating, some people are pretty good, but even that still. So I find bringing everyone, your food might be organized on your boat, but you might want to bring whatever's really tasty to you. And if you want to have a couple I usually have 2 or 3 drinks going at once, just to kind of make myself drink, and keeping food in just to keep your energy up. And generally you should have less problems with any lumpy waves up there. Just losing my voice here. Jumping into trimming. So I wrote down some notes on mainsail. I think Jano and Spinnaker. Mainsail trimming for Straits. Outhaul. The mainsails are mostly designed to go for upwind sailing. The outhaul is going to be on, and it's going to be on tight. If it's light air, then you're going to ease it a little, and downwind you're going to try and get some more power in the mainsail also. Top telltale, I've definitely discussed that a couple times, I guess. Vang sheeting, we do that a lot in Straits. Vang sheeting is what I call it when you're flying off when you're white sail, either white sail reaching or simply just going upwind in a lot of wind, you're slightly overpowered. The way to set up for vang sheeting is using the vang to control the twist. If the boom is in the center of the boat, your outhaul or your main sheet is going to control a lot of the twist because you're pulling it down towards the boat. But if it's off the corner of the boat, then the main stops pulling it down. So the way to set the main up in those conditions is to really crank, drop the traveler, crank the sheet on as hard as you can. The boat, if it's windy, the boat's going to start to heel pretty bad, and then crank the outhaul, crank the vang on, the boom vang on as tight as you can. And then you can start to ease the traveler, and that will hold the boom and the leech with a flatter. It'll be flatter. You won't have as much twist in it. And then you can ease it off. And then as it gets windy, you might have the outhaul up closer and be creating twist. But if you drop it below outside the boat, the boom just won't rise and the sail will flog. You'll continue to have a good grab on the leech in the mainsail and still have good speed. So anyways, setting up for vang sheeting, that's the way you do it. Night sailing. I made a few notes. For me, if I'm on mainsail, I'll probably every minute or two I'll shine a light up top, check the top tickler, check my twist in the main if it's still consistent with the conditions, and the masthead indicator. For whatever reason, I'm not one to stare at the wind down below. I always want to see it. But the masthead indicator is a huge one. The wind conditions keep changing all the time, also. So yeah, you want to really keep checking your sails up top. And another thing about night sailing, it's really easy for the driver, and sometimes the trimmers just fall into it with him, and he's following the wind, but he's not following a course. You stop following a course, it can happen really easy. And I know some really good programs, and they look at their track afterwards, and they're like, they've just sailed literally perpendicular to the course, and you always want someone staring at the plotter, checking that the skipper's going the right way. If I'm driving, especially if I'm white sail reaching, where I'm not on a solid bead, or if I'm not on a solid run, then I want someone to always keep saying that I'm going the right direction. At that point at night, you're going to be staring at your heading quite often, and having someone keep update that and make sure that you are going the right direction, because it's surprising how quickly you can start to go the wrong way, as you only get a couple people on deck. There's a few notes for mainsail, I guess. Spinnaker trimming, swap trimmers routinely. That goes with no matter no matter what you're doing, you should always do that. But you don't want to get the same guy on there for an hour. When you do switch out, we usually have a rule, where another trimmer comes in that don't just switch automatically and then walk away. Stick around for a couple minutes and make sure to tell that trimmer, oh, I was doing this, I was easing the sheet, letting it curl this often, and this is what I was expecting in the wind. So it's worth hanging around for a couple of minutes, and on any sail for that matter. But it can often problems with trimming will happen as soon as people switch. Calling out the wind strength of the drivers. So a lot of times, especially at night, you have less senses, and the drivers can only tell by what he can feel. Generally, if I grab the sheet and I start to trim, as soon as I grab it, I'll just say medium wind, and then when I feel it up, I'll say, okay, it's up a little, or it's less, and a lot of times everyone's heard someone saying, there's nothing here, it's basically telling the driver to heat it up. But it can really help the driver, because he wants to keep the boat moving, and giving him those warnings that, hey, there's loads of pressure here, he knows he can try and drive down. And it's a little bit trickier at night, because you don't want to do if you're trying to sail with a symmetrical kite to pull back, you always play that safety, not to do a jibe. But it really helps to keep communicating. It keeps the trimmers active, keeps the driver active. Flying the kite off the leech in light air. I threw this one in kind of last minute, but this is a trick that we do in light air distance racing. I guess so often when we fly, jibs or genoas, you're obviously flying off the leech, but in a spinnaker, so often the spinnaker's in front of you, so it feels like the power's in front of you and almost off the luff. But in light air, I think I make another note of it coming up here again too. But in light air, if you have your S1 or your flat light air cement, pull forward all the way, and a flat spinnaker, or even an A kite up, or if you're lucky enough to have an A0, code 0. A lot of times in light air, you're pushing that up as hard as you can, and you can feel the wind moving forward, and you're as far forward as you can go with this sail, but you're really powered up and going the right direction. And the front of the sail, where it breaks, will start to peel back. It'll start to break 3 times worse than you would ever want to see when you're trimming, and people will panic and be like, okay, jib up. And a lot of times, unless that sail truly flogs and empties, it's jib up, absolutely. But otherwise, you're not flying off the luff, you're flying actually off the leech. And as long as you haven't pushed the spinnaker too hard, I'm only talking light air for this matter, you're basically ghosting along. But you'd be surprised, because sometimes you might get an extra 5 minutes or an extra half hour. But the difference between switching to your Genoa might just collapse all your speed, and the angles just don't work. But it's just to realize that which end of the sail. At that point, you're not trimming. You've probably pulled the sail in as far as it'll go. Any more will either hurt the sail shape or even tear the foot apart, basically. And the driver's driving to the leech of the spinnaker. So it's a good trick. You can hold it as long as you can, and that has to make sense at where you are on the race course also. But and the only fun part with that once you do run that long, when you do decide to drop it, you'll be flying a spinnaker almost upwind, and it's never a pretty douse for sure. Genoa trimming. Halyard tension, probably the biggest thing on the Genoa, and leaving the halyard on the winch. So normally if you're going upwind, both main and Genoa, it's easier if you can to have them locked down and on the winch. It's easier on the ropes and guaranteed not to slip. So you're gonna, some of the newer Mylar sails will have pretty built-in